this evening's live chat, which, as you can see, is coming from this room again, and is once more at an unfortunate angle. I'll just turn the noise off so it doesn't come up twice. I hope you can actually see me, because I've got the thing in front of me right now, and mine hasn't actually come up. Has it? Oh, it is. It's coming up now. It's gonna. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So it's on its way to actually making an appearance. Right. So I'm going to talk about Kristallnacht tonight, and just before in the last half hour or so, I was reading the diary of Goebbels again, and I thought that also would make a separate video. So I'll see how well or not I do tonight, and then I might do Goebbels's diary for the nights or the 2 days in question to tomorrow. Right, to understand a little bit about the Nazi Party, we have to go back to the First World War and the aftermath of the First World War. And the aftermath was there was lots of small sort of extremist organizations. Well, I don't know if extremist is even the right words. Nutters organizations, I think, would be the best way of putting it. These are groups which would meet in beer halls and the like and other places and get sloshed. And in the meantime, they'd be talking about politics. It's a bit like the man in the pub who can resolve the economic questions of the day. Hello, Jeffrey and Neela. And therefore, hello, Big. And so therefore, you've got these people would be meeting and hello, Annie, and chatting about whatever they're up to and all the rest of it. Hello, Janet. Sorry, I won't say any more hellos because I'll be stopped all the time. But you can ask questions, and I'll try and answer them when I finish my train of thought, because I can start saying something and then my train of thought goes off elsewhere. Anyway, so the National Socialist Party, or the German Workers' Party, as it was initially called, had a handful of members, and Hitler sort of turned this thing around because he clearly had two things he could do. One is he recognized himself, as he said in Mein Kampf. He writes, "I could speak." And certainly, so he was initially. He was apparently a good speaker. I mean, when I watch him, I find it quite. If anything, I find it quite amusing. But rather than gesturism, don't find it convincing at all. But anyway, that may be me. But one thing he clearly was good at also was organization, and he had ideas, marketing and things of this nature, which certainly seemed to actually pull people in. So I think that he had these abilities, which he didn't know, and which he where he picked them up from, who knows. But as the party sort of grew inside, it decided it needs some kind of protection, some security guards, some bouncers. And so initially they recruited a small group called the staff, or the whole guard. That's the word in English. The whole guard. And but I think that fighting was probably one of the chief attractions of the National Socialist Party then. In the same way as you sort of get these pseudo-political organizations today, which are usually on the extreme right, and people join them because they want to go around fighting people. And so I think that a lot of people joined for this reason. Most of the people who joined were quite young. Some had been in the war, some others hadn't. I was also looking at some photographs today of the Putsch of 1923. And so one thing is quite clear. You can see lots of them have got bits of uniform, so I think these were sort of leftovers from the war. They kept the uniform and they turned up for the Putsch in their uniform. But as far as these characters, the bouncers and all the rest of it were concerned, from being a protection organization, they were then sort of progressed, if you like, into an organization that would attack other people's events. Now, as far as attacking other people's events is concerned, there's one thing we do have to bear in mind, that the places where these events were being held were private businesses. And these private businesses didn't necessarily want people smashing all their stuff up. So whoever the owners were, the Löwenbräu Keller and the Bürgerbräu Keller, didn't want they wanted to have the furniture there for the following night and all the rest of it. So I suspect that initially there would have been some assistance from the ownership, the owners of it, to make sure that there wasn't anything getting beaten up here. But it has occurred to me, I've got absolutely zero evidence of this whatsoever. I'll just put the idea out though, that there could have been some ideas that if they could hire people to smash up the opposing businesses' place. So you get maybe the communists will be meeting someplace down the road, and they could smash it up. I must absolutely say zero evidence that this was the case. Okay, zero. It just occurred to me it could have been. Anyway, so this thing called Stoßtrupp came along. Stoßtrupp is in English a shock troop, a storm troop. There's a better word. Stormtroopers were used in the First World War for the very first time, and they had tactics. So these tactics, those of you who have been in the army will be aware. For example, instead of just sort of standing up and allowing yourself all to get machine gunned down, what you do is you attack a position by sort of moving, not straight line, but running a little bit in a sort of a zigzag. You hit the ground, you fire off a couple of shots, stand up, run a little bit further. Somebody else is on the ground, somebody else is firing. So in this type of motion, and that results in far fewer people actually getting themselves killed. I hope the internet's still on, is it? Yes. And so this idea of the shock troop, Stoßtrupp, existed in the First World War. It was found in the German army. That's probably the reason why the German offensives, particularly the first three of the four, the fourth one wasn't successful, but the first three, which took first and the third above all, which took place in 19, were so successful, particularly if you compare it to the British and the French offensives of the previous years. It was successful because they used this type of tactics. And now, so the name shock troops was chosen. There's even been a film in the cinemas on the I think it came out in 1917 or something, of the shock troops in action. And this, I think, the name would have come from there. Now, it was the shock troops as such were the people who in 1923 were those which were the lead in this rather ridiculous beer hall putsch which the Nazis initiated. So on the 9th of November 1923, Hitler wakes up in the morning, he's got a bad tooth, but instead of going to the dentist, he had to arrange his activities for that day, which were to take over the Bavarian government, and hence from there somehow he had this idea of bringing down the government in Berlin. It was just totally ridiculous, but anyway, that's what happened. Now it would have been all good for a bit of a laugh, but what happened was that they in the beer hall there was a lot of dignitaries, people important, including the Bavarian State Commission, the person who would put held the reins of power in Bavaria, and having him as a hostage, which they did have as hostage, and hoping that he would then join them, bring the army onto their side or something along those lines. But in the meantime, what was happening in Munich was, whilst the government of Bavaria was effectively neutralized, and the police, including that of the police, these armed thugs were on the streets rampaging. They robbed a bank, they smashed up the Munich Post, printing presses, they attacked shops, attacked people in the street. This was like like after a bad football match or something like that. It was just gangs going around thieving and stealing, and just to cap it all off, the following day they didn't even pay their bar bill at the Bürgerbräu Keller. So the following day, anyway, once the place had run out of food and drink, they had this march, which had involved later in shooting incident which a number of people were killed, including 4 policemen. There were civilians killed. Okay, there's more Nazis killed than civilians and police, but all the same, this was an act of terrorism, attempted coup d'etat, and if it had been punished correctly, as it should have been, as the law demanded, then that would have been the last would probably anyone would have ever heard of them. I do, of course, appreciate that always the Nazi Party was just a tiny group of nutters until they were brought to the fore by the economic collapse that happened in 1930, 31, 32. Anyway, now after the failed putsch, the Nazi Party was banned, and its organizations were also banned. In 1925, they were legalized again. But one organization that wasn't brought back was the Stoßtrupp. The Nazis didn't reform it. So if you'd been a Nazi Party member before 1923, then you could rejoin again in 1925. And if you'd been a member of the SA, etc. But if you'd been in the Stoßtrupp, it wasn't reformed. So this is really the... which is really how it was. I'll come to that's a very good point. I'll come to it later. Now years go on, and Nazi Party comes to power, and in 1938 we have Kristallnacht, which was the accumulation of this anti-Semitic policy of the Nazis. Now, this Nazi Party, which is based above all on the conspiracy theories of Hitler and those around him, that somehow Jews are responsible for this, that, and the other, and or everything which is bad, which is like all conspiracy theories. They in fact, in my opinion, is only one reason for conspiracy theories, is in order to make somebody money somewhere along the line. And this was something similar. There was some people who made a great deal of money out of the National Socialist Party's conspiracy theories. So there was a gradual move to these pogroms. The very first thing the Nazis tried was a boycott of Jewish shops. That failed in 1933. But they then moved to gradual isolation. So people who were Jewish could have their jobs taken away from them. But there were so many in the first anti-Jewish legislation. There were so many exceptions that effectively it didn't affect all that many people. But then there was the fact that Jews couldn't be Germans in 1935. They were only sort of pseudo or half Germans or something like that, according to the Nuremberg laws. And eventually the gradual wearing down of the position of Jews in society, and you get to the position that Kristallnacht. Now, in 1936, in February 36, there was a character called Wilhelm Gustloff, who was shot. He was the Nazi Party in Switzerland. In fact, he wasn't Swiss. He came from Germany. I did a video on him about this time last year. He's best known because a ship was named after him, which sunk, which was the biggest disaster, maritime disaster ever in history, which happened off the coast of Swupsk in 1945. Wilhelm Gustloff was shot, but this happened at the time of the Winter Olympics in Garmisch-Partenkirchen. And Hess himself ordered that nothing was to happen. The person who shot him and killed him was Jewish. And David Frankfurter, he lived, I can't remember, definitely was around in the 60s. But anyway, he lived quite a long time afterwards. And they didn't want any problems because they wanted to show off Nazi Germany as a sort of a paradise or whatever. So, and then because of the Olympic Games in Garmisch, so nothing actually took place. Now, in the case of in 1938, there was a lead up to this. The first thing happened was with the government of Poland decided that anybody who left Poland for more than 5 years lost their Polish nationality and everything. Now, this affected everybody. It wasn't just Jews, but it was probably aimed more at Jews than at others. So, thing was this: in Germany, there was possibly as many, it may have been as many as 200,000 people who had left Poland, and of these, large percentage, very large percentage, were Jewish. And anyway, so this may have been there may have been some cooperation between elements. Certainly, the Polish ambassador in Berlin was very pro-Nazi. He'd met Ribbentrop in October of 1938, and Ribbentrop brought up the subject of the annexation of Gdansk, Danzig, and he just really didn't care less. So therefore, I've got to make this clear. There's no proof that there was between the two countries any type of talks on this. So I'm just suggesting that there could have been. Anyway, so the German government, Nazi government, then decided it was going to expel the Jews from those who had Polish papers from Germany, knowing full well that the Polish government wouldn't take them in, because if they'd been outside of Poland for more than 5 years. Now, what happened as a result of this was that there was lots of people in refugee camps, for example, in the town of Zbąszyń, which was then on the border, not so far from Poznan, between people were... sorry, I got a phone call. Put me off. It was in the no man's land between the two countries. Of course, there's no such thing as no man's land, because the border is a straight line between the two. But between the customs areas of both countries. So there was lots of Jewish people there in these camps, largely assisted by aid. For example, if you read the chronicler of the Warsaw ghetto, Emanuel Ringelblum, he went there to actually help out, giving assistance. And so you can read things from what his first-hand account of what life was like there. It must have been really tough for some of these people. You could have had people who had been in Germany for 20 years plus, even people who'd been born in Germany. For example, Herschel Grynszpan, the person who actually did take an action against this, he was born, he couldn't speak a word of Polish. Well, he might have spoke a word, but he couldn't speak much. And he was German. And his parents, yes, maybe they'd left Tsarist Russia and gone to live in Germany. But in any case, these people had been in Germany for a very, very long time. Now, anyway, so as the thousands were building up, which means just sort of kicked out their homes and then ordered to leave, often without any of their possessions and next to no money. So from having a normal house, normal job, and all the rest of it, and the following day you're in some refugee tent in a country which you really have never been to before in your life. Herschel Grynszpan, because of the letters he was getting from his family, decided to do something about it. Herschel Grynszpan was he was quite young. I forgot his age, 19 or something like that. He'd gone to Belgium, then he'd ended up in France. He'd had relatives in Belgium, he didn't have much in the way of cash at all. But anyway, he went to the German embassy in hoping to shoot the ambassador to make a protest, and he ended up shooting one Ernst von Rath. Now, Ernst von Rath himself is a person who was a career diplomat. He'd previously been in India. He'd got some dodgy disease when he'd been out there, and when he'd been out there, he had to be brought back because he couldn't stay out there. Lots of people get diseases in the tropics, but he'd also been treated allegedly for a disease related to homosexual activities, and I have some references to the medical things, but I didn't quite understand them. So, but anyway, he may have been, let's say he may have been homosexual, and it was later alleged that he and Grynszpan were together. But anyway, I think the proof for that is quite low. But I think the proof for the suggestion that he may have been is relatively strong. Now, Grynszpan shot von Rath, and then he hung around waiting for the police to arrest him. So he was arrested. Now, what happened next is that Hitler sent his doctor, Karl Brandt, and he also sent Brandt's former professor, Georg Magnus. Now, Georg Magnus his wife had actually been a member of the Reichstag for a liberal party, so it seems a bit rather unusual choice. But maybe because Brandt was there, and Brandt had been with Hitler for some time. Brandt was later to be the person in charge, effectively, of the T4 euthanasia campaign, and he was hanged in 1948. Anyway, they went there to take care of von Rath. Now, there is, however, notes, which was written by the surgeon on von Rath's condition. The notes are in French, but they are perfectly readable. Despite it being a doctor, it took me, well, I said perfectly readable. I mean, I had to start thinking. What's that word? But eventually, I think I worked it out, what it said. And now, I understand. Now, I'm not a doctor, so I really don't know. But there is one doctor called, is a Dr. Weiss, V-E-I-S, in Australia, and he's a professor at a couple of universities in Australia. And he says that the care that von Rath got amounts to nothing other than medical malpractice. It was as though they wanted him to die. It's a bit odd that Hitler should send his doctor because somebody got shot. I mean, why? I mean, didn't send any. Nobody was sent when Gustloff was shot or anything like that. I think it was to make sure that he died. I think that's possible now. I think there is a reasonable amount of evidence that suggests, or at least a conjecture, that it could be that he wanted him to die. And that also gave them a chance to think about what they were going to, how they were going to arrange what happened next. It seems as though they wanted a pogrom to take place, irrespective of how this may be regarded in other countries. Pogroms happened in Russia, had happened then comparatively recently. There'd been pogroms in Russia, but for a pogrom that happened in Germany, it doesn't really bear thinking about, really, that this sort of thing, this medieval practice, could actually happen. Now, so von Rath died on the 9th of November, and now every year, and the Nazis met in Munich for a celebration of this putsch of theirs, and 15th anniversary, so it was half a round anniversary, so there was quite a good turnout as far as they were concerned. Now, so they would meet in the Bürgerbräu Keller, and then they would have they would go down to lay wreaths for those Nazis who were killed, and they would have a comradeship evening. And now at the comradeship evening, the places of honor were given to the former Stoßtrupp Hitler. Now, bear in mind that Stoßtrupp Hitler didn't exist anymore, which has led to certain people trying to claim that the entries in Goebbels' diary must be forgeries. The thing is, lots of old boys and girls associations do exist, and even if your school, for example, might not exist any longer, but there could be school reunions, and these people would meet at least once a year. And furthermore, it seems as though the old boys network, because I will say old boys because the only people in the Stoßtrupp Hitler were men, they had outings. For example, they went to Landsberg to see the prison where they were all held together. Apparently also went to Stettin, which is quite a long way away. They had an excursion there. I don't know why they went there. And they went to other places in the area of Landsberg. So they did have these outings, the same sort of things. I mean, I went on a sort of an old military thing 8 years ago here in London. Or 2014 was, no, it was 10 years ago now, 9.5. I went on a sort of old boys reunion sort of do, and so these things are quite common. Now, the Stossgruppe Hitler was possibly as many as 100 people. And at the 1938 meeting, there was a table. Hitler was at the head of it, and they were sort of all around the table. We don't know how many people were there, but it was probably between 38 and 40 people there. And Michael said something. I'll introduce Michael in just a minute. I'll just finish, and then I'll go through the comments. And anyway, the evidence that we have now, often it was used to be said that it was the SA. Most books would tell you this. It was will tell you this. Sorry, it was the SA. People in civilian clothes in the SA who would go out and start smashing, started this off. But it seems to me pretty obvious that the order was given by Hitler to his Stossgruppe, and then they went out and on the street started smashing things up, and that's what led what led to it. And now there had been sort of anti-Semitic attacks on the 7th of November in Magdeburg, had been in Dessau and in Kassel, all of which appeared to have been started by local Nazi functionaries. Now, the idea was that on the 9th of November, there would be these attacks would start in Munich, and then Goebbels would broadcast it. It goes out on the radio, and that's encouragement for people to do it all over the country. But now, this obviously had to be coordinated, and so the coordination had to have been done a bit in advance. Now we have from the very Goebbels's diary. I'll read you tomorrow. I'll do this, and I'll read the diary, so we'll go every single point of it, and then maybe come to some other conclusions. So the Stossgruppe went out and started smashing places up. And I think with riots, what happens is this sort of just gathers an impetus. So you might have 40 people from the Stossgruppe there. They went out and they started smashing things up, and other people just joined in, or other Nazis. So you better go out and give them a hand and things like that. So it just gathered and gathered and gathered like this. Now, the evidence is Goebbels. The Goebbels diary is absolutely clear on this one, and that, I think, is what happened. There was only one person that could give the order, and that was Hitler. Now, in charge of the Stossgruppe was Julius Schaub on this day, and Schaub would never have acted by himself. Only a few weeks before, Hitler had demoted him because in Dessau there'd been some parade of the Hitler Youth, and Hitler thought that Schaub had made a decision about who should be in the parade and in what order, and Hitler was so wound up by that he demoted Schaub, and Goebbels found Schaub in tears. He was so upset about what had happened. Schaub was the person, he was with Hitler for 20 years, and that was he. See my videos on the Hitler diaries. It was him who burned Hitler's papers at the very end. So anyway, good. I'll now come to the points which have been made, because good. I'll now come to the points. Sorry, I just clicked the silence button, or the mute button. Right, so anyway, so we've got here Michael. Michael is Michael Miller, so I don't know if we use the surnames. Michael's written books on the Gauleiters, and if you want, I don't know if you can put a link into, you probably can't, but I'll put the link in if your link doesn't work to your publications. And so, and not only that, Michael will be able to recognize people, I think, far better than I can in these things. Davko says that they're behaving a bit like the Brexit Party. Well, I don't think they actually go that far, as much as I do not like the Brexit Party. Anyway, so hello, Mohammed, Colin, And so, right, Michael here writes, good, right. There was even a special uniform just for the Stosstroop veterans, and Himmler wore it as well, despite not having been an original veteran. But he was the RFSS, the Reichsführer SS, the big boss of the SS. So there it was. And the Stosstroop Adolf Hitler cuff, 1923, was worn by these veterans of the unit. So now, I can add actually a little bit to that, that they had an honorary role on the celebrations for the Putsch, because they were the ones handed out the free bus passes and the meal tickets, and if anybody did a uniform, they would sort it out. They were a bit of the honor guard. I mean, these sort of things they ask you to do. I mean, something happened to me once or twice. I've had to do things like this. So, you know, the old boys, yeah, I've had to do 1 or 2 things like this in Nazi party meetings. You know, yeah, they helped out. So the people of this type of thing. So this, I think, is a really important part of it. Colin asks, were there attacks in areas outside of Germany, for example, in the Sudetenland? Yes, in the Sudetenland, there was major attacks. The Sudetenland had just been occupied. And I'll read you a bit of Goebbels' diary. I don't want to come off the point, but I will read on the Goebbels' diary. At the same time as he's going on about the Kristallnacht, there's also a mention of the situation in Czechoslovakia, because they've changed the name of it. Because Sudetenland had by that time been occupied by Nazi Germany. In fact, he's only been in Nazi Germany for what, 5-6 weeks. But there were in many parts of in Sudetenland, the synagogues were also destroyed. Dafko says populism over humanitarianism. And yes, Michael. So, anyway, no, in Michael's book, I will actually mention, I'll embarrass him even further, but it's really very, very good. There's these really detailed explanations of the Gauleiters and who they were, what they did, and there's lots of pictures as well. So, anyway, good. Right, so I think I've sort of said just about everything I can do for the moment. I'm doing this off the top of my head. I admit, I read the Goebbels' diary before I actually said this. Now, a video I did on Jakob Grimminger, who was the bearer of the blood flag, I suggested that he was involved. And now, of course, I can't prove this. And there is no evidence as far as evidence is concerned. You can't say he was there smashing up the Ollel synagogue in Munich. We can't say that because there's no proof. But on the other hand, we would be asked to believe that he, as a former member of this organization, with the history that he'd been in the organization from the very beginning, within Hitler's circle. As to say that he didn't take part, I think is getting more ridiculous. Somebody did say in the comment section, well, maybe he was ill. Yeah, maybe he was ill, but that I can't prove. Maybe he had a dodgy beer at the in the Bürgerbräu Keller or something like that. I don't know, but it is likely. Now, another point I would say is, why were there only, say, there was about possibly around 100 members of the Stosstroop Hitler. Don't really know how many there were, but I think I tried counting out how many I had on my list. I had about 70 on my list, and okay, so that says 100. Let's say why were there only 40? The thing is this, is that some people either when Hitler turned on the SA, some people were killed, some people left, some people thought it was just daft, didn't want to get involved in it any longer, and some people's political opinions changed. So the numbers got whittled down. So if you say there was 40 there, that's 40% of the people who'd been there in 1923. I think that's a pretty good turnout, to be quite honest. But particularly if they're meeting every year, and when if you meet once every 10 years or something, maybe the turnout is bigger. Hard to say. Okay, so that's it then for today. Thanks very much for listening. Now tomorrow I'm doing this without notes, so it makes it more difficult. And I've got notes. There's a lot of similarities between Farage and Goebbels. There are one or two similarities. I wouldn't go to say there's lots of similarities between Farage and Goebbels. I think Farage is just, he would work for anybody who offers him money, whereas Goebbels possibly wouldn't. Thanks, Neela. So tomorrow what I'll do is I'll read, and I'll just read it. It'll be in English. What would have been really good. I just thought of this now. If it had somebody with me who was to discuss the meaning of the words in the German version, to see if there's any way because if I've translated the thing, there could be some dodgy translations in there somewhere. So that would have been even better. But anyway, we haven't got that facility. And so anyway, so I'll do that tomorrow. Thanks very much here for watching. So that's Neela. Colin, they sing the Horst Wessel song. I presume they did. I went to Horst Wessel's place of residence in. Sorry, I keep changing my position here because I'm not particularly comfortable. Hurt my back. And I went to Horst Wessel's former residence in Berlin. He came from Bielefeld, but anyway. So. Thanks very much for being here, and all the best. Be nothing on going or daft going on about Brexit, because there are similarities between Brexit and which was not in the interests of anybody except for a very tiny amount of people who stood to gain financially from it in a very large way. So thanks for watching, and tomorrow I'll do Goebbels' diary for the 9th of November, or 10th of November, because it was the following day. Bye for now.